a party in a warehouse that a friend told me about, and she was like, oh my goodness, it's really, this was in the 90s, so it was before that we could just get on FetLife and see what was happening. And I walked in expecting to be nervous and went, oh, actually, this feels like a really nice place. And I met this beautiful mistress who took me under her wing, and I think I gave her first few strokes that very day, so I haven't really looked back since then. The reason why I've taught this class, I've taught this for Kink Academy, how to make a masochist, is because I find in my professional practice that I have a lot of people saying to me, I've never gone that heavy before, I didn't think I could get there, and it's just a way of that I have that obviously works for me and the people that play with me, of making people feel quite safe and calm. So it's a little bit of a different environment. I have and everyone's play style is right. There's no right or wrong apart from obvious safety issues. So this is just my personal opinion. I don't like to come in and go, do it like this. Because if it's because every play session is between two people, and if they both walk away going, that was amazing, then obviously it was. Like, no one else can sit back and go, no, it wasn't, because they're happy. But what I think is, I have a good friend who likes to terrorise people. She likes to either force a safe word out of them in the first 10 minutes of a scene because she just likes them to know. She's tiny, blonde, huge blue eyes, and she's done, you think I'm so cute, I can break you like that. And they go, yeah, you can. Okay. So that's her style, whereas my style is to lull people. It's like the whole boiling a frog analogy in a way that they feel they're like, oh, it feels quite safe. But that doesn't mean that I necessarily, and then all of a sudden, poof, blood everywhere. But that doesn't mean that I start out with little taps and build up slowly, because with the cane, you can build up from different warm-ups with different implements and spanking and straps and paddles and all those things to get to the cane. But sometimes a cold caning is perfect, where they just bend over and straight in 6 of the best and you know what's happening. And it's very, that it can either be in a very formal situation like a scholastic where you're the headmistress and you're giving them a caning, but that's normally not a more extreme caning, because naughty boys don't, get hundreds of strokes of the cane. They normally just get, 6, 12, 24 strokes. So it's a little bit different. But what I like to do is just make people feel that they don't have to worry about, are they going to be okay, because I can do all that worrying for them. So I'm going to bring out Charlotte, who's my demo bottom. Could you take your boots off, please? And talk a little bit about the things that I think are really important to get people to that meditative state where they're thinking, this is really intense, but I can keep going. And that's, I think, for me, what I'm looking for is where everyone's, you can leave your underhands on for now if you like them. Okay, come here. Turn that. So what I want to talk about is the parts of the bottom that you want to cane. So she's already had a little bit of a smack. Actually, from my dear friend Mistress Winter, I sent her a present to have someone to smack.
Oh yay!
Charlotte said it was, the surprising thing was that we have such a similar play style. It was like, wow, that was kind of spooky but awesome. About the parts of the body that you want to be caning. Obviously, as you can see from the pre-spots, it's this bit here. It's like the nice big grabby butt bit. If you're hitting higher, depending on the person and how flat or round their bottom is, you can be hitting around the tailbone. Now, it's not such a dangerous thing as it is if you're using heavy wooden paddles, where obviously if you're doing high impact with those, you can have the risk of injury. But it's still not somewhere that you want to be hitting. Also, for most people, everyone's got their own kind of sweet spot, but for most people, this bit is generally the best kind of spot. The main thing that you want to avoid is wrapping, which is when you go around further than this kind of little circle, and you go around to the sides. The reason for that, years ago when I taught my first caning class, I actually thought, why is that so horrible? I'm going to go and work out and find out. And it's because, as anyone who's run knows, you've got ITB, the iliotibial band that runs down the outside of your legs. And if you just poke it like that, in most people it's chronically tight. So even going like that is quite uncomfortable. So if the cane comes around and whacks someone over there, it's just really horrible. And back in the day when I first started professional mistressing, in fact it was 6 months after, I thought, okay, I've got to be not a coward. I'm not a switch and I'm not a masochist, but I do need to know what this is like. And I used to take submissive sessions. Now I was in Australia, in New South Wales. You can just chuck my stuff on the floor if you want. In New South Wales, sex work is criminalised, so you know some ladies choose to do some things and other people others. But I was all like, yeah, I'm not going to do the sex slave thing, but I'm just going to challenge myself and see how tough I am. And apparently the answer is pretty bloody tough, because I could take a very heavy caning. I remember going down afterwards and sitting on a towel in the ladies' room and then in the lounge area and standing up later, and there were like big round spots of blood like that on it. So anytime anyone's like, ew, it hurts, and I'm like, I know. Or I turn my back and go, see, I've been branded, I lay there having hot metal, so don't tell me it hurts. Because it's supposed to, that's the whole point. That is why we like it. Okay, Charlotte. You've got your little other garment. If you want to lie up here, you can. It might be a little bit more. So there are all different positions that you can cane people in. My favourite for heavy caning is actually lying flat. People like all different sorts of positions. They like bent over, you know, holding the back of the chair, bent over, spanking bench or a horse and restrained, all different sorts of things. But I actually find, hopefully the ceiling's high enough. I don't know if the ceiling is, I don't know whether it'll work. Try not to take out any light fittings. It's one of the things when I'm having to cane in a different space of just looking around and being aware of the and the sound is one of the most delicious things, isn't it? That swish. And to know that when that happens at someone's bottom, is going to be in terrible trouble. So if you that is the end on. So I always do my canings in sets of 6. And I think that's one of the things that makes people able to take more and more of the intense sensation, because someone who I played with once wrote a piece about it and how you get to that point where you're taking over 144 strokes of the cane. And it's the timing, the fact that you get 6 and they might come quite quickly, but then you have that little moment where I walk around to the other side. I always do 6 from one, 6 from the other. Walk around to the other side, and you get that, you know, the hand on the ankle or on the back, and they just think, okay. And it's rather than someone looking ahead and going, okay, I've signed up for this super heavy caning and there's going to be hundreds of strokes. They think, okay, well, she's done 4, so there's only 2 more. And then they have a little breath, and then it's the next. So, with the technique, what you need to be doing, I've watched lots of people sort of cane and, you know, different length canes and different sorts of techniques. And what you can sometimes see is that people are, the most important thing is to finish with the cane parallel, like this. You don't want to finish where your hand is much higher than the bottom, because if you're finishing the stroke with the point, with it at an angle like that, you're just going to be landing the point of the cane and not the flat of the cane. So you want to be landing the flat so it all finishes like this, nice and flat across here. That's what sometimes when you see photos of canings, and obviously the people who posted the photos are super happy with them, so I'm not, criticising that, they're obviously enjoying themselves and are proud of what's happened, but it's a very different style of caning to my style. And you see them and they've got like all these little kind of marks like that are about this long, and that's because instead of landing it flat, they've been landing the point of it. And that sensation is quite different. Would you say it's different, Charlotte? Can you talk?
Yes. So like when it's flat, it feels like a lot better because the pain seems to be distributed all along there. But when it hits the point, it feels like more like if say if you have needle in your skin. It's a different sensation. And I guess it's also that once you get the pain, you start processing it, and it makes it easier to just because it's spread out.
I end up hitting myself on the bottom all the time when I can. We go all the way back. And that's the other thing is I think you need to put a reasonable amount of strength into it, and don't flick. Because some people cane like this. It's hard to do it when you've been caning a certain way for a long time, but it's like a flick, and that's just quite different. It's not a heavy cane stroke because it's not landing. It doesn't feel like it's going all the way through. So it's like, I don't know if anyone else has done martial arts, but when you're breaking, it's like the energy hits the tiles and they break before your hand even gets there, and you're hitting through to the floor. You're not aiming. You're never aiming to finish at the surface that you're punching or striking. And it's the same with caning. You're not aiming to finish at the surface of the bottom. You're aiming to finish all the way through to the bench. The other thing and I can say this from my, I don't know how long ago now, 12 years ago, experiences of receiving canings as a professional submissive, is that the ability to take more is built so much around trust, and trust is built through accuracy. If the person thinks, where's that next stroke going to land? Is that going to be really high on my tailbone? Is it going to be too low on my thigh? Is it going to wrap around and bite me over here? Then they're not able, there's so much going on in their head that the ability to process the pain is greatly reduced. Have you found that, Charlotte?
Yes, I have.
She's like, what, I have to talk? I thought I just got to lie here like a pillow and let me smack me with a stick. So I'll talk a little bit about different sorts of canes as well. There are a lot of nice cane-like implements made of all different sorts of materials, but I tend to think, for me, if it's called a cane, it has to be made of cane. Otherwise, it would be called it would be called a plastic. It would be called a stick. It would be called, oh look, I have a nice Delrin I'm going to smack you with. Yeah, but that's my personal thing. And we did some experiments with the different sorts of plastics and things. And you found that the dragon cane was more painful, but
yeah. So it depends on the material. the plastics, they felt more fuzzy. So like, you know, it's painful but more fuzzy. While the canes, because they're slightly, I guess, more lighter than the plastics, and also because they're sometimes more flexible, it felt more alive. So it's more like a combination of a fuzzy feeling and like being cut. So so that's the feeling we had.
Yeah. Yeah, the canes feel very alive. And that's what I find as a disciplinarian, that a natural cane feels alive in your hand, and it feels, to me, like a beautiful whip. It feels like an extension of your arm, an extension of your body, whereas the ones that are made of the synthetic materials just feel very stiff, and they don't feel the same, they don't have the same hand feel. And when they land in a very different way. So I mean, I'm very much a traditionalist with the types of canes that I use. And the severity of the cane is not necessarily based on how long it is or how thick it is. So you might think the longer, thicker canes are more severe. Sometimes the thinner, shorter ones can be quite severe. But what really is the judge of how severe something is the density of the rattan. They often they can be quite difficult to find. I'm a big fan of dragon canes, and what makes a cane a dragon cane is that it's just a thicker, heavier rattan. So if you weigh two canes of the same diameter and the same length, the dragon cane will be heavier. So I'm caning a little faster than I normally would, mainly because I want to get Charlotte to a more thrashed up level a little faster. She may have had one or two canings over the past 8 years, just one or two. But so if you're caning someone who's quite new to it, you can use a technique similar to what you use when you're piercing, which is you get a person to take a breath in, so I'll do that. And you can just watch their back. So breathe in, out, and cane at the bottom of the out breath. Because if you, it's like when you're piercing, if you do it when they're breathing in, it's like they can release the breath and it comes out that way. It's just a very different sort of energetic thing. Another way to time things in a way that makes it that it's a bit of a little trick that they don't necessarily need to know is that if you get them to count, because you're not going to give the next stroke until they say 3, thank you, mistress, or however you've instructed them to count. If you'll count, please, Charlotte.
1, mistress.
What's the thank you?
Sorry, mistress.
Oh my goodness. Very long manners, young lady. We'll start again then.
1, mistress. Thank you, mistress. 2, mistress. Thank you, mistress. 3, mistress. Thank you, mistress. 4, mistress. Thank you, mistress. 5, mistress. Thank you, mistress. 6, mistress. Thank you, mistress.
So it really gives people an ability to pace it for themselves, but they don't need to know that. Where's our spare towel, Charlotte? Oh, okay. That's all right. I was going to put my toweling demonstration. Another thing that I recommend to people who are new to heavy caning is to use towels to block up the space. I thought we had another towel that shows. I would say, yeah, I need to show this on here. I'm going to use this for a second. Not a pillow, but like a rolled up towel. Is to put it here, and then you're protecting this area. So if you do happen to strike it, most of the force will be deflected. And you can put them here and here, or you can even have a whole bunch and just like have it, the area framed out. And I always say, don't feel that that makes you look like you don't know what you're doing. It actually makes you look like you do know what you're doing, and you're taking extra precautions. It's like when you get a new single towel, you might put a towel across the back of the neck just because you're not as used to the ranges yet. Or if you're playing in a really different space and you know. So we're starting to get a little bit of brokenness now, which is quite tough though. I'm doing 12 now. You're like, what? That's okay. It's just like, okay, 6. What? And I could see it, you know, I could see it in the back and the hamstring. And that's the best way to observe, I think, how someone's going and how they're processing what's happening with their sensations. Because everyone's different, and every top can train their bottoms in different ways that they like to receive feedback. I personally am not. I prefer people to be a little bit more quiet and stoic, because sometimes I think that the histrionics is like crying out and pleading, and it just, it can kind of come between the bond, like the bond, and I sound like a bit of, you know, a bit of a hippie, but it's quite an energetic connection that you have with someone when you're taking them through an ordeal. And a lot of it is about reading their energy and how they're going with that, and making them feel that they're in a very safe place and that they can go to that extreme, through that extreme ordeal process without, you know, having to worry about what's happening. Sometimes some bottoms, I think, get so concerned that they need to demonstrate that they're having a good time or provide feedback, and they're wondering, what do I need to say? How do I need to move? Is this like particular verbalization? Is she getting the information that she needs? Whereas I don't want them to worry. They don't have to do anything. All they have to do in this moment is just release and just lie, sink into the table, and just be present and be processing the sensation and be just feeling comfortable.
Do you want to talk about how it processes?
Yes, I would love you to talk about how you process, Charlotte.
It's all like, for me, it's like it's different for different individuals. Like I process it in terms of like an energy wave. So like as soon as you know, the cane hits, I imagine like an energy wave that travels, you know, in one direction down my leg and the other up to my body. And slowly the energy dissipates, you know, as soon as it gets further from the cane stroke. And then that sensation just like provides more energy for the next stroke. So it's like a cycle. So it's just going, you know, bang. So energy goes out, and then bang, you know, the energy goes out. So that's the way I process it. So like for different subs, it might be different. So maybe you know, this is one way you can do it. Maybe others, I don't know, but that's how I process it.
And so do you find that the speed really impacts how much you can take? So is it harder to take these faster strokes than it is when we've been doing it a little, more slowly?
Yes, it can be, but I guess maybe when we start doing it, it would happen.
But yeah, I've been hitting you with sticks for a few years.
I find there's such a thing as too slow also, because you're talking about one builds on another, and if you let it dissipate completely, then there's nothing to build on. It's sort of back to zero.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any other cane recipients who want to add anything in?
I have a question. You said you channel the energy, you feel it go out. Do you find yourself anticipating and looking forward to the next one?
Yes, once you get to a certain rhythm, you do, because you just waiting for that energy to come through. Yeah. But you don't want to anticipate too much, because then you start dancing up, and that's the worst you can do when you get in. You want to be as relaxed as possible, and that's what Mr. Stillman talks about, in safe space, because when you feel safe, you're more relaxed, and that allows you to take more, and I guess at the end of the process, you feel a lot better too. Say, wow, I've taken these many strokes.
Yeah, it's about creating that calm sort of haven. I mean, one of the other thing I think that I tell people is that a lot of it is also just to do with courage. Masochists aren't always. I mean, not all masochists. I would say most people are not able, they don't go, oh, that feels amazing. It's not that they feel the sensation of the pain and they think, oh, this is really delicious, I love it. A lot of the time it's painful, but that's something that they crave. But there's always, for a lot of people, and I mean, Charlotte could probably speak to this, and other people here more than myself, there's a moment where you're like, what on earth is happening? She's hitting me with a stick and it hurts. And when you get to that point, that's when you make a choice. And the choice is always there. We talk about consensual non-consent, and I believe in that, but I also believe at the end of the day, legally, if someone says, I no longer consent to this activity, then from a legal standpoint, I have to stop. If they were to walk out the door and I say to this people, you say that and you walk out the door and go to the police station and say, I told her I no longer consented, then they'll go, that's not good, let's go and have a chat to that lady. So, my concept with safe words is that safe words are to keep you safe, they're not to control what's happening. I prefer my subs to communicate with me. And they can communicate with me by saying if they're in some bondage that it's feeling a bit tight, or they can communicate, they're getting pins and needles, or they can communicate by saying that their lower back is starting to feel a bit strained, and then I can put a cushion under their hips or under their chest, or where it's going to reduce the strain on them. But I prefer that they communicate just in plain English rather than saying mercy or red or kittens or whatever safe word they've been given, in order to stop it. Because for me that means that the negotiation hasn't worked very well and my observations haven't worked very well, so we need to have a little break and work out what's happening before we step up again. And quite often the sub doesn't want that. They want to give me information. They want to say, this is too much, I can't, or I don't think I can take any more. And if they get to that point, I can say, if they safe word, it's over, we have a chat. If they say, please don't cane me, I can't take any more, then I can say, really? What a shame, I hate that you can't take it. Poor you, what an awful woman I am. And then in the meantime, they have it, we're not out of headspace, I'm still feeling in control, I've given them one more smack, but then without them necessarily realising, I've gone, okay, well this isn't working, I'm just going to go and get another implement, or I can, say, well then, we're just going to have to move to CBT or something, or, So it's not completely, it's not taking their power back. The power exchange is still there. They're still in the space of submitting to me, but they've given me information that I needed to have. They're quite often, normally I think, if you're experienced and observant, you know how someone's going. And the main things for me to observe are the muscles in the different parts of the body. Like Charlotte talks about how if you clench, everything's with you. Squeeze your butt. Harder. Harder. So how did that feel, Charlotte?
Oh, bad.
Did you say bad or good?
Bad. Bad. And why does it feel different? What's different about that?
Like, it seems like I can't release that energy. It's just like, it's just trapped in there. It's like, and it feels like a bit more painful too. I don't know, maybe it's because the way I process the pain, but it just feels like it's just there.
Yeah.
It's hit a
It's more likely to break a cane,
It's hit a
too.
roadblock and it's in that wall and it can't go anywhere.
Yes.
I wanted to go back to the processing
Yes.
thing. So like for me, like I know that at first it does hurt a lot, but like I think about the end result. And like I know like once the endorphins start building, like that's when it's gonna start feeling better. So it's almost like I'm aiming for that good feeling. So like of course at first it's gonna hurt, but then
Yeah.
and just knowing that it's gonna feel better eventually, like helps me process it in the beginning.
You're like, okay, this is the bad bit. I've just got to get through here. I just have to tough it out. Yeah, amazing.
Into a nice hot tub, that initial, but then it starts,
That's boiling a frog.
or really cold water, just jump in.
Yeah, I can't do that. I have to go. I'm one of those like sneaking toe by toe. And I'm actually going to take my shoes off because a lot of the time when I do corporal punishment, I do it barefoot. And there's all sorts of reasons for that. You might knock it off. There's all sorts of reasons for that. I've done a fair bit of different sorts of things in my life, but with martial arts, a lot of the power that you have comes from your legs, and also on an energetic level, it comes up. It comes up from the earth, and you bring the power, you bring the energy up through you and out through the cane. And it's like and it goes through the cycle that Charlotte was talking about. That it goes from the earth energy up through me, through the cane, into her, and then she spreads it out. And that's, I think, part of what gives that really calm, meditative state that enables her to process a lot. So I'm obviously getting overexcited. I'm like, hey, go with stick, blood comes out.
When you're working with a submissive and you see them start to tighten up halfway through, say, I do 6 strokes or 12 strokes, do you back off a little bit or continue, or do you recommend for them to try and relax a little bit more so they can process better?
Yeah, what I will do if I see that starting to happen, so I'll be like, now squeeze your butt cheeks again, and I'll go. A lot of the time I'll just go in and I do this a lot, but and that's because you're touching. You can calm their energy quite well in this spot. And also just wiggling it starts to make the muscles release. But yeah, or I'll remind them to breathe. Or often I'll say, tell them, well, we've got 3 more strengths or something along those lines. How many was that for?
So you would actually try and stop before, sorry.
Yeah.
Instead of continuing, you want to go ahead and at least pause in between.
I might
Make sure they
pause,
relax.
yeah, and just think. It depends on the person and how I feel they're processing and how they're going. A lot of the time, yes, I'll just keep going through. But if someone tells me that they can't take any more, I'll often say to them, and this is a thing that I do quite often to get people to be able to walk out of there not feeling that they've shot themselves in the foot, that they really wanted to take experience, and then they just wimped out of it, and then they walk out of there and they feel disappointed in themselves, and they feel, bad. And I never want that. And also I want to hit them some more. Let's be honest. You would think after 20 years of hitting people with sticks, they wouldn't get quite so overexcited, but it's really fun. So I'll say something like, do you think you can take? Well, we've got 3 more for this set. Do you think you can take the last 3? And I would say more than 9 times out of 10, they'll go, yes, mistress, and take that last 3, because it's something that's quantified. Like, okay, well, I've already had this many, I can just take a couple more, it will be okay. And that way they feel that they really got pushed, that they got to the point where they didn't want any more, and then they gathered up their courage and went through to the next stage. And I often speak about it in terms of courage as well, because I think people sometimes expect that they're going to get into a transcendent space of happiness straight away. And as you were saying, that might come down the track and you're like, oh my God, that was amazing, and you've got this huge rush of endorphins, but there's always a sticky point where you're like, this is horrible. I don't want to do this again. It hurts. What am I doing? And to be reminded that, you chose to be here. This is Amnesty International is not going to be writing letters to me saying, Mr. Stop hitting those poor innocents.
So Charlotte, do you find that part of your pleasure is her pleasure in hitting you with that stick?
Yeah. So that's one of the things too, like, the talk has to be pleasant. If not, then it's what's the point? You can just get a machine to just, hit you.
I guess I'm really surprised that after all the strokes you've applied, there's like not a word or anything at all, no signs at all from him. Is it that you build up a really high tolerance, or is he on some sort of drug? Or
No, she's not drugged.
I could never be completely quiet that way. Just it's like if someone steps on your foot, you go ouch, sort of.
But the thing is, if someone steps on your foot, that's a sensation that you didn't expect and you didn't consent to and you don't want. The person who stepped on your foot isn't enjoying it unless there's an actual bad person. So I think it's a lot of that. Charlotte's someone who is a heavy masochist and is quite experienced in this in caning. But she came to see me for an introductory session and was probably, I've caned people who've never done any BDSM play before. And it's not going to be hundreds of strokes, it's just going to be, 6 or 12, but it's just about, but when they have that experience and they walk out and they go, I can't believe it, that was amazing, and a lot of that is about the things that I think that I've been saying about feeling calm and safe and
So, let's say you're like your average person who would ask to be caned, would that be typical if they wouldn't say a word, or would they probably cry out or some sort of verbal response? I mean, if they was sort of average, like what you mostly experience.
Depends on the person.
Yeah, it's so determined on the person.
And it depends on the person. I'm a heavy masochist bottom too. It depends on where my headspace is at the time and what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for just pain, I may not. If I'm looking for a release, I'll cry and scream because I'm looking to get out something that's in me, and I'm looking for that cathartic release. And it just depends on what I'm also looking for during that session too, and what he's trying.